Welcome, my friends. Got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in. So, yesterday was the men's singles championship at the U.S. Open between Sinner of Italy and Alcaraz of Spain. And Donald Trump was in attendance, as you probably are aware, and he was met with a great deal of booing when his fat, orange, disgusting face was shown on screen. And you probably heard before this there was an order went out from, I guess, the USTA to the broadcasters that they were not allowed to televise the reaction to Donald Trump in anticipation of all the boos. Anyway, he was booed because he is a despicable figure in American history, and most decent people understand that he is the greatest threat that America has ever faced to our future since the Civil War, probably, and that he is a criminal. He is a disgusting human being, and he should be booed. But beyond booed, he should be impeached, removed from office, and prosecuted for his crimes. But, you know, I guess we'll take booing for now. Did you see this, by the way? Donald Trump was photographed at the U.S. Open with a pill in his mouth, or clutched tightly between his teeth. I gotta ask a question, though. Who the fuck takes a pill like this? Do you do this? What the hell is that? Look at this fucking idiot. I'm just saying. Whatever. There's a lot of speculation as to what this pill might be. Some people think it is proof of whatever his ongoing medical condition is. Some people think it is the little blue pill to help with his little orange mushroom. Other people think it's just a breath mint. You know, I don't know how much, by the way, a breath mint is going to do when you're sitting in a fucking dirty diaper and you have rank-ass BO. So, I mean, you can't really cover all that up with a breath mint. But, you know, what do I know? Anyway, that's the speculation. It's the buzz is what is that pill. I don't claim to have any answers. Also, he was also photographed sleeping, because that is what all alpha men do at, what was this, like 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. He had to take a little grandpa nap. So there he is, Republican alpha male. Okay, enough about that. Let's move on to some breaking legal news that just came out here. Trump has lost again in court, this time in his attempt to have an appellate court throw out the judgment in the E. Jean Carroll case. Let me read a little of this article for you from CNBC. A federal appeals court on Monday rejected President Donald Trump's bid to overturn a jury verdict, ordering him to pay $83.3 million for defaming writer E. Jean Carroll. Now, you will recall that this lawsuit had to do with the fact that E. Jean Carroll came out and publicly claimed that Donald Trump had raped her in a department store in the 1990s. Of course, Trump denied this and accused her of being a liar and a whole bunch of stuff in you know, the way Donald Trump attacks people. And E. Jean Carroll said, "Screw this, I'm not taking this. I'm going to sue your orange criminal ass." And she did. Twice. And she won. Twice. Unlike these rich companies and these, rich colleges and universities and these media companies, unlike all of them who back down in cowardice when they are threatened by Donald Trump, little old E. Jean Carroll stood up and fought back, and she won. She's a hero. The rest of those people and those institutions are all a bunch of fucking cowards, and it's people like that that are the reason we're losing our country. If we had more E. Jean Carrolls, we'd be doing just fine. Let me continue with this. The decision from a trio of judges on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit upheld that verdict, which Trump argued was both excessive and invalid, following a Supreme Court decision that expanded his presidential immunity. Now, if they're referring to the immunity decision from last summer, then Donald Trump and his lawyers are morons. That decision had only to do with immunity from criminal prosecution. It had nothing to do with civil lawsuits. There's already other Supreme Court precedent having to do with presidential immunity from Supreme Court law from civil lawsuits that date back to the Clinton administration when he was sued by Paula Jones. Anyway, it's no surprise to learn that his lawyers are morons. They are. Just take a look at Alina Habba. Anyway, continuing with the article, but the appellate judges held that Trump, quote, has failed to identify any grounds that would warrant reconsidering our prior holding on presidential immunity. In other words, you and your lawyer are morons. Okay, that immunity decision is irrelevant here, and get the hell out of our courtroom. The decision came less than a week after Trump's lawyers signaled that they will soon ask the Supreme Court to overturn a jury verdict in a separate civil case Carroll had filed against the president, for which she has been awarded $5 million. So do the math on that. 83 and $5 million. That's how much juries have awarded E. Jean Carroll. The decision, I just read that. Come on, Romano, get your shit together. Both cases accused Trump of defaming Carroll in statements denying her accusation that he raped her in the mid-1990s in the Manhattan department store Bergdorf Goodman. Okay, so that is good to know. There's only one court to which Trump can appeal this latest defeat, and that is to the Supreme Court. Whether they will take it or not, it's anybody's guess. I used to make predictions about what the Supreme Court would do because they weren't just shots in the dark, right? They were informed opinions because I understand the law. And so you could make informed opinions about what the Supreme Court might do, even if sometimes you're wrong. I don't do that anymore because who the hell knows what this Supreme Court is going to do? They don't file... Let's try this again. Getting ahead of myself, and I can't speak. They don't follow the law or the Constitution anymore, so it's impossible to predict what these people are going to do. And that actually leads me to another point that I want to make here. I read an article last week that talked about lower federal court judges starting to criticize the Supreme Court. They're getting pissed off because what happens is Trump can't go immediately to the Supreme Court on these. Well, in rare sort of circumstances, there are emergency petitions he can make to the Supreme Court. But generally speaking, he can't go directly to the Supreme Court. He's got to start, like all lawsuits start, in federal district court. That's the trial court. That's where the fact finding is done. And then the judge applies the law to the facts to reach a decision. Then, if you want to appeal that decision, you appeal it to the circuit courts, which are the appellate courts, and they just rule on issues of law. They're supposed to accept the jury or the judge's finding from the trial court, their factual findings as fact when they apply the law as well. They don't do their own fact finding, in other words. And then you can appeal it to the Supreme Court. Now, these lower court judges are pissed because they're doing everything right. They're holding hearings. They are gathering the evidence. They are writing well-researched, in-depth opinions in these cases. Then Trump gets it up to the Supreme Court, either on an emergency basis, and a temporary basis if it has to do with an injunction, or on the merits. And the court just essentially rules without saying anything, especially when it has to do with him seeking injunctive relief from lower court decisions or whatever. They just issue an opinion, a decision rather, with no opinion, no explanation whatsoever. They just overrule the lower courts without saying anything. And the judges, the lower court judges, are getting pissed. They're like, what the hell are we supposed to do here? You're giving us no guidance. You don't tell us how we got it wrong. You don't send it back, because especially when it's an intermediate sort of decision, a decision on an injunctive relief or something that's temporary, but the case is still pending in a lower court. The Supreme Court is not sending it back with any sort of instruction to the lower courts. Nothing, no explanation at all. And the lower courts are getting pissed at this. And I think I understand what's going on here. I think I understand why the Supreme Court is doing this. Because it's highly unusual. You know, they usually can't wait to tell you what they think about everything. That's why these Supreme Court decisions are like 50 pages long, right? Or more in a lot of cases. Because they can't wait to tell you what they think about every little friggin' detail, right? But now they're not saying anything. And I think the reason is because they're cowards. I think that they are afraid to rule against Donald Trump. And so they're going to rule in his favor, but they don't want to create precedent. They know that they should rule against him. They know their decisions are wrong, and so they don't want to author an opinion to explain a decision that they know is wrong. So they just rule without saying anything, because it is the opinion, the written opinion of the court that creates the precedent, right? So when when the court decides something in the future, it has to take into consideration its prior rulings as precedent. They don't want to create legal precedent in these rulings that they know are wrong. So they're trying to have it both ways here. They're trying to rule in Donald Trump's favor without creating legal precedent. And they're just hoping, like so many people, they're just wishing this all away. Not all of them. I'm sure that Alito and Thomas are loving this. But I don't know about the rest of them. Even the other Republican appointees. So that's what I think is going on here. They're just hoping. They're just waiting Trump out. Right? They just want him to come and go, and then things will be back to normal. And when things go back to normal, they don't want to have a body of case law that they created around ruling in favor of Donald Trump in clear violation of the law and the Constitution. They just want to treat this all as an aberration. Just rule in his favor so he does, because they're afraid of Trump openly defying the Supreme Court and rendering them irrelevant. That's what they're worried about, in part. And so I think they're just, I think this is what John Roberts' position is. Let's just give Trump what he wants as often as we possibly can. And let's just not say anything about it. Let's not create any precedent because we know we shouldn't do this. And let's just hope this all goes away. Trump will be gone in 3.5 years, and then we could just get back to normal. And we won't have to defend those prior rulings because we didn't even issue opinions about it. We just ruled in Trump's favor without saying anything. That's what's going on here, I think. Okay, here's something I want to mention real quick. Donald Trump's order, his executive order, renaming the Department of Defense. As you know, being a person as I am who is interested in fact and truth, I like to read these executive orders. I know very few people do. Instead of reading what Trump actually says in the executive order, they just report what he says as fact. Well, you can't just report what he says. You have to also read the executive order. And usually, he completely mischaracterizes the executive order, greatly exaggerates what's in it, or completely lies about it. So he'll say it does one thing when it doesn't do anything of the sort. That happens a lot too. So everyone is reporting that Donald Trump, in fact, renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Now, most of our pathetic media just reports it as fact. That's what he did, without even pointing out that that is illegal. Because Donald Trump, the Department of Defense was created by an act of Congress and named by an act of Congress. The name Department of Defense is federal law. Donald Trump cannot change that because he wants to. He cannot change that by executive order. You cannot change a law by executive order. Very few in the media even bothered to point that out. So I went and read the executive order, and guess what? Donald Trump didn't actually rename the Department of Defense. Not legally. He doesn't even pretend to legally in the executive order. Now, practically speaking, he's doing it. He's calling it the Department of War. He's changing, plaques and name badges and letterhead and all that stuff. So it looks like he actually changed the name of the Department of Defense. But he didn't. At least not in terms of federal law. So got it right here. It's called Restoring the United States Department of War, and it's dated September 5th. Now, Section 1, as all of these executive orders do, is just some introductory nonsense as to the purpose of the executive order, why they're doing it. He talks about how it was called the Department of War under President Washington and war fighting and blah, 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 blah. Basically, he thinks it sounds cool. And so he wants to change it back to the Department of War. And he says, I have therefore determined that this department should once again be known as the Department of War, and the Secretary should be known as the Secretary of War. Then it goes to Section 2, Implementation. This is the actual substance of the order. Subsection A, the Secretary of Defense is authorized the use of this additional secondary title, the Secretary of War, and may be recognized by that title in official correspondence, public communications, ceremonial contexts, and non-statutory documents within the executive branch. The Department of Defense and the Office of the Secretary of Defense may be referred to as the Department of War and the blah, 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 blah. So you see what happened here? He's not changing the name of the Department of Defense. In fact, they explicitly say that any statutory documents, which are required to be produced by statute, they will continue to have to say Department of Defense. But in non-statutory documents and in just referring to the department, he wants everybody to start calling it the Department of War. But he doesn't actually legally, in terms of the statute and what the law actually says the department is, he's not changing that at all. It's still legally called the Department of Defense. Donald Trump has essentially just ordered it to have a nickname. That's what it is. He's like, I like this name better. It sounds cool. I want to be this big, tough, I want to present myself as a wartime president. I'm gonna put memes of myself, in cavalry outfits and act like I'm this big badass, war hero, when I in fact claimed I had bone spurs to avoid the draft and I'm just a cowardly piece of shit. Anyway, that's what it is. It's a nickname. He didn't change the name. So there's that. But you know what he is doing? As I said, he didn't legally change the name, but practically speaking, he's changing the name. And what he's doing to implement his nickname change is he's spending actual money. And we got an article here from Politico that it is expected to cost billions, with a B, billions of dollars to give the Department of Defense the nickname, the Department of War, in the way that Donald Trump wants it done, because they're changing letterhead, they're changing all the stationery, all the things that have Department of Defense written on it, except things that are statutory. To change all of that stuff costs a lot of money. And that's what they're doing. And, did I print it out? Yeah, I did print it out here. Part of this article, when asked how much the name change would cost, Trump told reporters on Friday, quote, "Not a lot. We know how to rebrand without going crazy. Not a lot. Just, just multiple billions. Not a lot. Just a small percentage of, say, what I made on my crypto scam. So really not a lot of money." So the taxpayers are now going to spend billions of dollars, or actually better put, the United States government is going to borrow billions of dollars because our budget is massive. We don't have the taxpayer money coming in. We don't have tax revenue coming in to pay for this shit. So we're borrowing money. We're adding to our debt so that Donald Trump can sound like a tough guy and use the name the Department of War because he fancies himself a war fighter. Meanwhile, while we are spending billions of dollars on fucking letterhead to change it to the Department of War, Trump is cutting, health care for people, cutting the Medicaid program, cutting food assistance programs for low-income families, taking food away from children, cutting the USAID program, that's gone. By the way, I'm going to do a video about this, a separate video on the Romano Report, about all of these MAGA farmers just crying and whining. We're getting killed. We're losing our farms. They're whining that they're losing their farms. They're all going bankrupt. Why? Because of Trump's tariffs? Because of Trump's cut to the USAID program? Because you know who is a huge beneficiary of the USAID program? American farmers. Because through that program, there was a foreign aid program. We purchased a lot of American agricultural products to send overseas as foreign aid. Well, Trump canceled those contracts, which means American farmers lost millions and millions and millions of dollars because the guy they voted for cut the program that benefited them, and now they're out there whining. Oh, no. They're actually praying. I saw like a mass prayer event with these MAGA farmers. Oh, please, Lord, save us from the consequences of our vote. Of course, they don't say that because they don't directly blame Donald Trump. It's always somebody else. It's just they're cutting our programs. No, it's not they. It's Trump. It's the guy you voted for. In other words, it's you. You did this, you stupid fucks. All right. Anyway, I'm going to do a video about that. I hope you watch. That will be on the Romano Report channel. Okay. Oh, and by the way, in addition to cutting Medicare, Medicaid, but Medicare, they're also starting the process of cutting Medicare too. I don't know if you've heard this. I reported on it last week. But they are doing a test program in certain cities, certain areas, certain states. They're testing this program to deny procedures and things through the Medicare program, and to see if they can get away with it. Right? They're requiring in certain areas pre-approval that they don't normally require for a bunch of stuff, and it's a way to deny coverage to Medicare recipients. And if they can get away with it, they're going to expand that throughout the Medicare program, and seniors who now have certain things approved through Medicare are going to find that those things will no longer be approved and covered through Medicare. So, there's that. So he's cutting all these things, but he is spending billions to give the Department of Defense a nickname that he thinks sounds cool. Okay, now I would like to move on to some things going on Twitter that I'd like to talk about. First, let me show you something I posted this morning because it's important to remind people. I wrote, "Happy Monday. This is your daily reminder that Donald Trump is desperately trying to cover up the Epstein files because Trump is named in those files and he doesn't want you to know what he did to children. So I think it's important that we not lose sight of that. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, as we know for a fact, and he is in fact still desperately trying to cover that up. By the way, did you see Mike Johnson over the weekend? Or maybe it was on Friday that he first did this. He claimed that Trump is or was an FBI informant against Jeffrey Epstein, because he was being asked questions by Manu Raju there in the Capitol about Epstein. And MAGA Mike was going on and on saying that, Republicans are for full transparency, and we're trying to release everything. And therefore, this effort by Thomas Massie to try to get a discharge petition to force the release of these Epstein files, that's not needed because we're already doing everything in our power to release those files, which, of course, is complete and utter horse shit. He is doing everything he can to cover for Donald Trump. He and the entire Republican caucus in the House, with the exception of Thomas Massie, and the only other ones who signed on to his discharge petition, I believe, are Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace. Three of, really, in most things, the most detestable in the House. But nonetheless, they are bucking House leadership. They're bucking MAGA Mike, and they're even bucking Donald Trump in joining with Thomas Massie on this discharge petition effort to release those files. Anyway, MAGA Mike was making excuses why they don't really need to do that. We're already doing everything we can. And Manu Raju says, well, Donald Trump is out there calling this whole thing a hoax. And MAGA Mike, of course, he has to defend Donald Trump at all times. That's his primary job. So he reflexively tries to defend Trump. Oh no, he's not saying it's a hoax. He's just saying that to accuse him of having anything to do with all of this is a hoax. That's what the hoax is. He knows it's not a hoax. In fact, he was a confidential informant for the FBI when they were investigating Jeffrey Epstein. And he has since walked that back in the last 24 hours, I believe. But I did post a video about that. I didn't see a lot of people asking the very obvious, what to me was an obvious question there. Because if Donald Trump was in fact a confidential informant for the FBI, that does not tend to exculpate Donald Trump. That doesn't defend Trump. If anything, it makes him appear more guilty, right? Because he was offering that as a defense. And of course, the idiots in his cult would see that as a defense. But really, if you know anything about, FBI informants, you know that you're only good as an informant to the FBI if you're part of the crime that they're investigating. If you are involved with the criminals, right? If you are part of it. That's the only way you're helpful as an informant to the FBI, right? So they'll get a drug dealer to rat on other drug dealers, right, as a CI. So if Trump is a CI, then that means he's involved in whatever Jeffrey Epstein was doing to these kids. So this is not a defense of Trump. And maybe that is why MAGA Mike is walking it back now. People just assume, well, he's walking it back because he got caught in a lie. Well, maybe. Might also be that he's walking it back because he realizes what I just said, that this actually makes Trump appear more guilty. And so he had to cover that all up. Anyway, the point is, let us not lose sight of Epstein, okay? Because so much of what Donald Trump is doing right now, including what he did over the weekend, posting a meme of him from a scene from Apocalypse Now, threatening Chicago with war. All of this, not only does it serve and advance his authoritarian goals, it also serves as a distraction. And I fully believe, maybe you don't think this, and we don't know for sure, but I am of the belief that what Donald Trump did to children, that he really was involved in all of this. And whatever it is that he did is so bad that he really believes it could completely destroy him. I think that that's what's going on. And I don't think there is anything that he would not do to keep that from coming out. I don't know for a fact because he's covering it all up. But that's what I think is going on. And I really think there's nothing he wouldn't do, including starting a war, including attacking an American city. There's really nothing he wouldn't do. Now, to that point, I came across a tweet this morning that reminded me of stuff that's already out there. So here is the tweet that reminded me. Breaking, actually this isn't exactly breaking, but breaking Kazakh KGB officer, I can't even pronounce his name, quote, Putin has in his possession video of Trump sexually assaulting minors. Now this has been out there for a while, and I think this could be also true. I think this is different from the Epstein thing, but this guy is such a filthy, sleazy criminal, Donald Trump. I think there are a lot of things that could be out there. Evidence, videos. There's a lot of things that could be out there about a whole bunch of Donald Trump's crimes that he may have committed. And this one has to do with Russia having compromise on Donald Trump. And based on, so this guy, this Alnur Musayev, or however you say his name, who says Putin has in his possession video of Trump sexually assaulting minors. Here's what I think happened. Donald Trump, although he says he never had been to Russia in the 80s, in fact there's video evidence, or there's photo evidence of him and his wife in Moscow in the 80s. Anyway, I think that when he was in Russia during the 80s, the Russians offered him, let's say, underage women for Trump's pleasure. This is my best guess, and this is the kind of thing that I think Putin has on Trump. So they offer because this is exactly the kind of thing that the Russians would do. I think they offered him young girls to use as he wished, and of course had video cameras planted around the hotel room that Trump was staying in, and probably to which these young girls were delivered. And Donald Trump, being the narcissistic moron that he is, probably didn't. Nobody would try to set me up or anything, try to catch me doing anything bad. Everybody loves me, right? They just love me. That's why they're offering me these young girls. So he's probably too stupid to even be suspicious. So probably these young girls were delivered to him in his Moscow hotel room, and he took out the orange mushroom and assaulted these young girls with it. And I think the Russians have that on videotape. Now, I don't know that that's true, just based on reporting things like this guy saying this kind of thing, and then importantly, watching the way Donald Trump has behaved vis-a-vis Russia over the last 10 years. How that Vladimir Putin is the only person that he will not speak ill of or stand up to or take any action against or whatever. Putin's the only one. He will never step out of line with Putin. There's got to be a reason. And I'm sorry, I don't think that reason is, he just loves other dictators. I don't think that quite covers it. I think Putin absolutely owns Donald Trump. And I think it would be for a reason such as that. And for this guy, this former KGB, to say Putin has in his possession video of Trump sexually assaulting minors, I think that's probably true. And if that is true, how would Putin come into possession of that sort of thing? Well, I think the most likely way is just as I described. Trump goes to Russia at their invitation, and they play on the fact that he's a sick SOB and he's stupid as fuck. And they offered him these girls, and they had the whole room outfitted with recording devices, and they got it. Their mission to get dirt on Donald Trump was successful. That's what I think happened. I don't know. I hope time will tell. I hope we find out everything that's going on. I don't hold out much hope that we will. If nothing else, I hope when Donald Trump is of no further use to Vladimir Putin, that Putin just drops it all. But I doubt that'll happen. But a man can hope, can't he? Okay, what else do I have here? Oh, all right. This is, we got all these Trump's brown shirts from ICE and various federal departments being deployed to our cities to be used against the American people. And a lot of them are masked, but this one turned up. Now, I don't know for a fact that this is true and not photoshopped or something. It's so easy to manipulate images and things like this. You don't know what's true or not, but this I wouldn't be surprised of. And I've seen this in a lot of places today. So take a look at this. Here is a thug. I'm not exactly sure what department he is with. It says police, but he has a U.S. something badge here, probably ICE. And take a look at this. He is wearing a gold pin of a profile of Donald Trump. If this is actually real, this is deeply, deeply sick and disturbing. And I don't think I have to explain to you why. But anyway, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is in fact real. And I want to show you something else here, just to go to the point that these people are thugs. And to make a point that I have been making since the beginning of this second Trump presidency, which I will make here in a moment. But let me show you a brief video clip here. Let me get that up here. Okay, I think we can see that. Let me play this. This is, oh, by the way, this is in, according to the caption here, it's taken on September 6th in Portland, Oregon.
Stick away, you pussy ass bitch! Put that stick away, you pussy ass!
All right, let's see that again, shall we? And take note, please, that these are protesters. They are, I don't know, again, I'm not for sure what agency these stormtrooper thugs are with, but they got, he's got the mask on. This has got to be federal. Probably, again, this is probably ICE if I had to guess, almost certainly. Notice that no one is actually physically threatening him in any kind of way or impeding his ability to do his job. They are there as protesters. They are yelling things at him, which is within their First Amendment right to do. Somebody calls him a pussy-ass bitch, which famously, who was it who referred to Donald Trump as a pussy-ass bitch? Was it maybe Jasmine Crockett? I'm not exactly sure, but somebody called Trump a pussy-ass bitch. I think it is a perfect use of that term for Donald Trump. It's also a perfect use of that term for this fucking thug right here who has to cover his face like a pussy-ass bitch. So that's all they're doing. And I guess he didn't like being called a pussy-ass bitch, so he did this.
You pussy ass!
All right, let's be very clear about something. That is a crime. That is assault everywhere in this country. He was not acting in self-defense. He wasn't using any force pursuant to any lawful authority to do so. This was a protester who said something that this thug didn't like, so he assaulted him. This is a crime. We have seen many instances of exactly this kind of thing, and in fact much worse, being committed by these ICE thugs and other federal agents carrying out Donald Trump's orders. And here's the point I want to make about this, and I've been saying this from the beginning. We do not have to take this shit. And one of the ways that these states can push back on this is to arrest these thugs who are committing crimes when they are carrying out Donald Trump's orders to go into these places and terrorize civilians. Right? That is a crime. And just because they are federal, and so what I'm saying here is state and local authorities need to be arresting people like this thug. Okay, that is a crime. That is a state crime. They're in Oregon. This is not a red state. This is not a place that is controlled by MAGA Trump cultists. So there is no reason that this thug should not be arrested and prosecuted for assault. And I, for the life of me, don't know why we're not seeing this in all these blue areas where these thugs are committing these crimes. We saw a lot of this coming out of California. Here we see it in Oregon. We're probably about to see a whole lot of it happening in Chicago. We need to arrest these people and prosecute them. Now, I've heard people say to me, well, you know, if you arrest them, then you're going to have a military standoff, a standoff of force between federal officials and local officials. That's not how this would work. I'm not talking about sending in a SWAT unit from the the Portland Police Department, although that would not be a bad idea. In fact, I had other video, wish I had brought that one up, video of, I believe it was, I can't remember a place it was, but I think it was in Chicago actually, of local PD pushing back some ICE thugs and kicking them out of the area. So sending in Portland Police Department to go and arrest this thug would not be a bad idea. But you can't, in order for them to do that, the Oregon police would have to have seen this crime committed in their presence. And if there was any Oregon PD there, or Portland PD there, they should have arrested this thug on site, because that assault would have been committed in their presence and they wouldn't need a warrant to arrest them. But that's not how most of this stuff would go down anyway. You come back with a warrant and you knock on this piece of shit's door in the middle of the night and kick it down like they would do to regular American citizens and drag this piece of shit out of his apartment and arrest him and then prosecute him. That's what they should do. The point is, you don't have to arrest him right then and there. You can go get a warrant and arrest them later. And then you don't even have to deal with some sort of standoff between the Portland PD and the ICE thugs. You just go, when he's at home sleeping in his boxer shorts, and arrest him then, like you would any other criminal. That's what they should do here. The point is, these thugs need to be arrested and prosecuted. And for the life of me, I don't understand why we're not seeing that done. I'm sick of words only. I'm sick and tired of Democratic politicians who are rightly calling this out, but that's where it ends. I don't want to hear you just tell us about how this is illegal and what they're doing is illegal and unconstitutional. I want you to use the authority that some of you have in these blue areas and push back against this. Arrest these thugs. Put your police in the streets to prevent Donald Trump from deploying the National Guards. You know, guys, it's going to have to come to that. It's going to have to come to that. And here's another thing that they should be saying. In addition to just saying, this is illegal, this is unconstitutional, which is good. Like, for example, J.B. Pritzker. You know, he pushed back against Trump over this weekend, threatening war on Chicago. And he made statements that are really good. But you know what else? J.B. Pritzker and people like Governor Newsom and really every Democratic governor and mayor, they should be putting these thugs who are carrying out Donald Trump's illegal orders. They should be putting these thugs on notice. If you come into our districts, if you come into our city, if you come into our state, and you commit crimes on Donald Trump's behalf, you are going to be arrested and prosecuted. You do not get immunity just because you are following Donald Trump's illegal orders. Okay? There is no supremacy clause issue here. Federal agents aren't exempt from state law. And Democratic politicians, elected officials, should be putting these thugs on notice. You come in here and you commit crimes, and you will be arrested and prosecuted like any other criminal. And let me tell you something else. Some of these would-be presidential candidates, I wish that the presidential election were already underway. I wish they would do what Donald Trump did. Remember, Donald Trump announced he was running for president like as soon as the election was over last time, so that he could say, because he knew he was going to be prosecuted, and he wanted to say, they're just coming after me over politics. They're trying to arrest their political opponent who's running for president. Right? So he announced like immediately that he was running for president again. I wish that they would. I wish Democratic people who are going to run for president on the Democratic side would just already come out and say they're running, because then they can put these people on, and they can put them on notice anyway. But what they should be saying is, when the next Democratic administration comes into power after Donald Trump is out of here in less than 4 years, when a Democrat is president, anyone and everyone who followed Donald Trump's illegal orders will be prosecuted, including members of the military who followed Donald Trump's illegal orders. We will come after you because the military and law enforcement, everyone, is obligated not to follow an illegal order. And this bullshit excuse of we were just following orders is the same bullshit excuse that Nazis used when they were prosecuted in the Nuremberg trials. We were just following orders. Well, that didn't work in the Nuremberg trials, and they shouldn't work here in the United States. The Democrats should be putting these thugs on notice, whether they are in ICE, whether they're in the FBI, whether they're in the National Guard, whether they're in active duty military. If you follow an illegal order of Donald Trump, you will be prosecuted. And that includes, in my opinion, these people, these members of the military who gave the order to blow up that boat full of 11 Venezuelans. That was illegal. I'd call it a war crime, but we're not even at war, which makes it even more illegal. Whoever gave the order to blow those people up, that person should be prosecuted. The Secretary of Defense, nicknamed the Secretary of War, should be prosecuted. And let Donald Trump go ahead and pardon them. But they should be prosecuted. Anyway, okay, what else do I have here? Oh, this is actually a good segue to this final thing I want to bring up from Twitter. This is a tweet from Ron Filipkowski about that Venezuelan boat situation. He wrote, so if you're out on a boat, Trump can just blow you up and kill you and everyone on board by saying you had drugs without presenting any proof. That's how this works now? Yeah, apparently that's how it works now. And by the way, even if he offered proof, that's not legal authority to kill people. The President of the United States is not authorized to kill anyone just because they had drugs on them, including foreigners, including people he labels as narco-terrorists. That doesn't give him legal authority to murder them. Okay, this is not a legitimate use of the military. It's illegal. It's a crime. Donald Trump, if that footage was in fact real, and some people speculated that it's it's AI or it's of something else entirely, and he's just saying this. But assuming it's real, that's a crime. He proudly posted video of his own crime. But I do want to offer something. Now, I don't know that this was a hoax, this was AI or anything like that. I'm just going to assume that it was real. But if it was AI or somehow, not what it purported to be in some way, because you can't trust anything that comes out of the White House. Anything that this man says. Here's how I think it could be, what they might be up to if this was in fact fake. Because we don't even have any proof that it actually happened. Let alone that these people are actually drug smugglers or narco-terrorists or whatever he called them. We don't have any proof that it actually happened, other than Trump says it did and they showed this video. And so what it could be, if it's not real, is that he says he did this to see if he could get away with doing it for real. Because, as I said, this is flatly illegal. That's a crime. That's an impeachable offense, right? But say he wanted to do that without actually doing it to see if he could get away with it. Maybe he has this image generated AI, or they took some other image and says that it was what he says it was, that, oh, we just blew up 11 Venezuelans in this boat, just to see what the response would be, to see if there would be any serious pushback from Congress or anything. And if there was, then he could say, because remember, one of the things that they said they did this for was as deterrence. If they blow up or show this video of them blowing up narco-terrorists, well, then other narco-terrorists won't try to smuggle drugs here. So it was for deterrence. So if there was pushback and people in Congress demanding investigation and demanding to open impeachment proceedings because this is an impeachable offense and all that, Donald Trump could then come out and say, hey, I was just bullshitting you. That wasn't real. That was AI. And the reason I did it was to deter narco-terrorists from bringing drugs into our country. This was just designed to scare them without actually having to kill anybody. It was a brilliant strategy and you just blew it. You know, I could see him doing something like that. Now, I'm not saying that what happened. I'm just going to assume, because Donald Trump is an authoritarian thug who has no problem murdering people, apparently. And we saw what he did. I mean, he would have had no problem if his cult members had succeeded in killing those, many police officers with Trump flags on January 6th. He would have had no problem with that whatsoever. If those people had turned out to be cop killers, if they had murdered those police officers on that day, they still would have gotten pardoned and been lauded as heroes by Donald Trump. So we know he doesn't have any problem with killing people for his political benefit. So I'm just going to assume that this is true. Well, that'll do it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.